The colony ship drifted through the void like a dying whale, its engines silent and cold. Inside, 12,000 humans waited in the darkness, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The life support systems had failed 3 days ago. And now, the ship called Horizon's Promise was nothing more than a metal coffin floating between the stars. Captain Deho stood on the bridge, his face lined with worry and exhaustion. He was a large man with gray hair and tired eyes, but he refused to sit down. Not while his people were dying. The emergency lights cast red shadows across the control panels, making everything look like it was covered in blood. "Send the distress signal again," he said to his communications officer. His voice was rough, like gravel scraping against metal. "Sir, we've been broadcasting for 72 hours, the officer replied. "There's no one out here. We're too far from Earth, and we don't know if anyone else even exists in this part of space." Deho nodded slowly. They had taken a risk, choosing this route to their new colony world. They had wanted to be pioneers, to find a faster path through uncharted space. Now that choice was killing them. The children were crying in the lower decks. The old ones had stopped complaining, which was worse. That meant they were giving up. "Keep sending it," Deho said, "until the power runs out completely. Someone might hear us." He didn't believe his own words, but he had to give his people hope. That was what captains did. They carried hope even when it became too heavy to bear. On the 4th day, something changed. A signal came back. Not words, not even sounds that humans could understand, but a response. Someone had heard them. The communications officer jumped from her seat. "Captain, we have a response. Unknown origin, unknown language, but they're approaching our position." Deho felt his heart beat faster. Relief and fear mixed together in his chest. They were saved, maybe. Or they were about to meet something that would finish what the engine failure had started. Humans had never met another intelligent species. They had no idea what to expect. "All hands, prepare for first contact," Deho announced through the ship's speakers. "Stay calm. We don't know what's coming." The alien ship appeared 2 hours later. It was beautiful in a way that made Deho's throat tight. Smooth curves of silver metal, glowing with soft blue light, moving through space like a fish through water. It was smaller than the colony ship, but looked far more advanced. The design was so elegant that it made human engineering look like children playing with blocks. A new signal came through. And this time, the ship's computer managed to translate some of it. The translation was rough, full of gaps, but the meaning was clear enough. The aliens were asking if the humans needed help. Deho sent back a simple message. "Yes, we are dying. Please help us." The alien ship moved closer, and then something extended from its side. A docking tube reaching out like an arm offering assistance. Deho ordered his crew to accept the connection. What choice did they have? Die slowly in the cold? Or take a chance with the unknown? The airlock opened, and the aliens came aboard. They were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like pearl. They had 4 arms and large eyes that reflected light like a cat's eyes at night. They wore simple clothes and carried tools, not weapons. One of them stepped forward and made a gesture that seemed like a greeting. The computer translated her words. "I am Captain Hyman of the Villani trade ship Gentle Current. We received your distress call. We will help you." Deho felt tears in his eyes, but he blinked them away. "I am Captain Deho. Thank you. Thank you so much." The Villani moved through the ship quickly and efficiently. They brought power cells to restore the life support. They shared their food supplies, strange fruits and proteins that tasted odd but filled empty stomachs. Their medical team treated the sick and the weak. They worked for 3 days straight, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. Hyman explained through the translator that they were merchants, traveling between worlds to trade goods. They had been on their way to their home system when they heard the distress signal. She said that helping those in need was simply what good people did. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that Deho felt deep in his bones. On the bridge, Deho and Hyman stood together, watching as the human ship's engines came back to life. The Villani engineers had managed to repair the damage using parts from their own ship. They had given up pieces of their own vessel to save strangers. "We can never repay this debt," Deho said. "You've saved 12,000 lives. What can we possibly give you in return?" Hyman's large eyes seemed to smile, though her face didn't move the way human faces did. "You owe us nothing. We help because it is right. Because we would hope someone would help us if we were lost and dying in the dark. Perhaps one day, when you are strong and we are in need, you will remember this. You will help someone else who needs it. That is payment enough." Deho reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. It was a compass, old and scratched, made of brass that had turned green with age. It had belonged to his grandfather, who had been a sailor on Earth's oceans before humans reached for the stars. "This is from our world," he said, placing it in one of Hyman's 4 hands. "It helps people find their way home. We give this to you so you remember us. So you know that we will remember you. Humans do not forget kindness. We do not forget debts. If you ever need us ever, we will come. This is my promise." Hyman looked at the compass, turning it over in her hands. She seemed to understand that it was something important, something personal. She held it carefully, like it might break. "I will keep this," she said. "And I will remember you, Captain Deho. I will remember all humans." The Villani guided the colony ship to the nearest safe harbor, a trading station run by several alien species. They stayed until they were sure the humans would be fine. Then, with a final message of farewell and hope, they departed. Their silver ship disappeared into the black, leaving the humans alive and grateful. Among the survivors was a young girl named Jiwon. She was only 8 years old, but she remembered everything. She remembered the cold and the fear. She remembered her mother holding her tight, telling her that help would come. She remembered the strange, beautiful aliens who saved them all. She asked her father why the Villani had helped when they didn't have to. Her father smiled sadly and said, "Guess they are good." "Remember this, Giwan? Remember that there is kindness in the universe? And remember that we owe them everything." Guan nodded. She would remember. She would never forget 20 years had passed since the rescue. 20 years since the Villani had saved 12,000 human lives in the darkness of space. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had found its place among the stars. The Galactic Assembly Hall floated in neutral space. A massive station where hundreds of species met to discuss trade, law, and peace. It was built like a wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Inside its grand chamber, representatives from across the known galaxy gathered beneath a dome that showed the stars beyond. Ambassador Minho sat at the human delegations table, reviewing the day's agenda on his datapad. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and grays streaking through his black hair. He wore simple clothes compared to the elaborate robes and armor of other species. Humans had learned that, in galactic politics, it was better to look humble and helpful than powerful and threatening. The other species saw humans as builders and fixers. When 2 empires went to war, humans negotiated the peace. When a space station needed construction, humans designed it. When trade routes needed protection from pirates, human patrol ships kept them safe. They were useful, reliable, and most importantly, not dangerous. At least, that was what everyone believed. "Another request for engineering assistance," said Counselor Tyann, looking up from her own datapad. She was younger than Minho, sharp and efficient. "The Korthon want us to build 3 new orbital platforms around their mining worlds." "Tell them yes," Minho replied. "But we need payment in advance this time. The last project, they took 6 months to pay us." Tyann nodded and made a note. This was the human role in the galaxy. Not conquerors, not warriors, but contractors and diplomats. It was honest work, and it kept humanity safe. No one feared the species that fixed their plumbing and mediated their disputes. Across the galaxy, Admiral Guan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Morning Star. She was 30 years old now, no longer the frightened child who had nearly died in a broken colony ship. She had joined the Human Defense Force as soon as she was old enough. Driven by the memory of being helpless, while others saved her life, but the Defense Force was small. Only 50 ships, most of them light cruisers designed for patrol duty and rescue operations. The Morning Star was the largest, and it wasn't designed for war. It had advanced sensors for finding ships in distress, its medical facilities for treating refugees, and cargo holds for delivering aid supplies. It had weapons, yes, but only enough to fight off pirates or defend itself. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress call," said her second-in-command. "Commander Bora, civilian transport, is under attack by raiders in the Helios sector." "Set course," Guan ordered. "Maximum speed. Ready the medical teams?" This was what human ships did. They responded to emergencies. They saved people. It was important work, work that mattered, but G1 sometimes wondered what would happen if humanity faced a real threat. Not pirates or accidents, but a true military power that wanted to hurt people. Would their small fleet be enough? Would their reputation as peaceful builders protect them? She pushed the thought away. Humans had been lucky so far. The galaxy was mostly peaceful, and the few warlike species were kept in check by mutual defense agreements. There was no reason to worry. The Villani had prospered in the 20 years since they saved the colony ship. Their trade network had grown to cover hundreds of star systems. They were beloved across the galaxy for their fair prices and generous spirits. The Villani didn't just sell goods, they built relationships. They remembered their customers' names and their children's birthdays. They gave credit to those who needed it and never pressed for payment when times were hard. High Merchant. Hyman had become a leader among her people. She was old now, her pearl-like skin faded, and her movements slow. But her mind remained sharp, and her influence reached far. She kept the brass compass in a special place, displayed in the Museum of Friendship on the Villani homeworld. Next to it was a plaque that told the story of the lost human ship and how the Villani had chosen to help strangers. Young Villani children visited the museum on school trips. They looked at the strange device and asked why humans had given it to them. Their teachers explained that it was a symbol of gratitude, of a debt that humans felt they owed. The children didn't really understand. How could saving lives create a debt? Wasn't helping others just what decent people did? At the Galactic Assembly, a new matter came before the Council. Reports had arrived from the Galactic Rim, the edge of explored space where few species ventured. Ships were disappearing. Colonies were going silent. The few survivors who made it to safety spoke of a military force unlike anything they had seen before. "The Krelvian Dominion," announced the Assembly speaker. "A towering insectoid being with a voice like grinding stones. They are an expansionist empire. They believe in conquest and subjugation. They have already claimed 17 systems, and they show no signs of stopping." The chamber filled with worried murmurs. Many species in the assembly were merchants and scholars, not warriors. They relied on defense pacts and mutual cooperation to stay safe. The idea of a species that simply took what it wanted by force was frightening. "We must organize a defense," said the Drachnary representative, a reptilian warrior whose species prided itself on military strength. "We have ships. We have soldiers. Let us meet this threat head-on." "The Drachnary fleet numbers 200 ships," the speaker replied. "The Krelvian Dominion has over 2,000. They have been preparing for conquest for generations. We are not ready for this kind of war." Ambassador Minho listened carefully. His expression remained calm, but inside he felt a cold fear spreading through his chest. A war like this would consume the galaxy. Millions would die. And humanity, with its tiny fleet of rescue ships and engineering vessels, would be swept aside like dust. "We should attempt diplomacy first," Minho suggested. "Perhaps the Krelvians can be reasoned with. Perhaps they want resources or territory that we can negotiate over." Several delegates nodded in agreement. This was why they liked humans. Always looking for the peaceful solution. Always trying to build bridges instead of walls. But the Drachnary representative shook his head. "Humans mean well, but they do not understand war. The Krelvians do not negotiate. They conquer. They enslave. They destroy. There is no reasoning with them." The session ended without a decision. The Assembly agreed to send a diplomatic mission to the Krelvians, but they also began preparing defenses. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew that, but it was better than doing nothing. Giwan received a coded message that evening. It was from Minho, marked urgent and classified. She read it in her private quarters, her face growing pale. All human ships are to return to Earth immediately, the message said. Prepare for possible war. This is not a drill. She had never seen such an order before. The human fleet had never been recalled, not in the entire 20 years since humanity joined the galactic community. She looked out her window at the stars and wondered what was coming. She wondered if humanity's time of peace was about to end. On the Villani homeworld, Amen sat in her garden, enjoying the evening air. She held a cup of warm tea and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Her assistant brought her a datapad with the day's news. There are troubling reports from the Rim, the assistant said carefully. A new empire is expanding. They are violent. Hyman set down her tea. How violent? They destroy worlds that resist. They take slaves from those that surrender. The Galactic Assembly is frightened. Hyman was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the young human captain who had given her a compass 20 years ago. She wondered where he was now, if he still remembered that day. She wondered if humans would be safe in the coming storm. Send a message to the human delegation, Hyman said. Tell them the Villani stand with them. Whatever comes, we face it together. Her assistant bowed and left. Hyman picked up her tea again, but it had gone cold. She looked toward the museum where the compass waited, and she whispered a prayer to the old gods. She prayed for peace, but she prepared her heart for war. The Krelvian fleet appeared in the outer reaches like a plague of locusts descending on a field of grain. Their ships were dark and angular, built for one purpose only: war. They moved in perfect formation, thousands of vessels blotting out the stars. And everywhere they went, silence followed. The first diplomatic mission never returned. The assembly sent 5 ambassadors representing 5 different species, all trained in negotiation and conflict resolution. They approached the Krelvian border under a flag of peace, broadcasting messages of friendship in 200 languages. The Krelvian response was simple and brutal. They destroyed the diplomatic vessel without warning, without communication, without mercy. The message was clear. The Krelvians did not negotiate. Within 3 weeks, they had conquered 20 more systems. Colonies that resisted were bombed from orbit until nothing lived. Colonies that surrendered were stripped of resources and their populations taken as slaves. The Krelvian Dominion did not want peace or trade. They wanted everything. They would take it by force. Warlord Krell led the invasion from his command ship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist. He was a hulking creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick armor plates growing naturally from his skin. His species had evolved on a death world where only the strong survived, and they had brought that philosophy to the stars. The galaxy is weak, he told his generals as they reviewed their conquests. They have grown soft with their trade and their diplomacy. They build monuments to peace, while we build weapons. They will fall easily, his generals agreed. They had studied the major species of the galaxy. The Draconary had spirit but lacked numbers. The Villani were rich but had no military. The humans were barely worth mentioning, a small species known for building space stations and mediating disputes. None of them posed a real threat. What is our next target? One general asked. Krell pointed to a star map, his claw tapping a cluster of systems near the galactic center. The Villani trade routes. They control the commerce of 50 systems. We take them, and we cut the galaxy's economic heart. The other species will have no choice but to surrender or starve. The order was given. The Krelvian fleet turned toward Villani space like a knife seeking a throat. On the Villani homeworld, panic spread like wildfire. Their orbital defenses were minimal, designed to stop pirates, not a military armada. Their merchant ships were fast and maneuverable, but had no weapons. Hi, merchant. Hyman called an emergency council meeting. How long until they reach us? She asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3, replied her military advisor, a younger Villani named Sunwoo, who had trained with the Draconary. We can evacuate some of the population, but not everyone. And where would they go? Every system near us is also a target. Hyman felt the weight of 20 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. Her people were peaceful. They had no experience with war. Many of them couldn't even imagine the kind of destruction that was coming. "Contact the Galactic Assembly," she said. "Ask for help. Ask for evacuation ships. Ask for anything." But the Assembly was in chaos. Every species was preparing to defend their own worlds. The Drachnari were rallying their fleet, but they knew it wasn't enough. Other military powers were pulling back to fortified positions. No one had ships to spare for evacuation. No one except humanity. Ambassador Minho received Hyman's personal message in his quarters on the assembly station. It was marked urgent, and when he opened it, he saw the face of the old Villani merchant who had saved so many human lives 2 decades ago. "Ambassador Minho," she said, her voice tired and sad. "I do not ask for military aid. I know humans are not warriors. But please, if you have any ships that can help evacuate civilians, we would be grateful. We will pay whatever price you ask. We just want our children to survive." The message ended with an image. The brass compass, sitting in its display case in the Museum of Friendship. The compass that Captain Deho had given her all those years ago, with the words we remember engraved on its surface. Minho stared at the image for a long time. He thought about the stories, the ones every human child learned in school. The story of the colony ship Horizon's Promise, and how the Villani had saved them when they were dying in the dark. The story of Captain Hyman, who had said that helping others was simply the right thing to do. He forwarded the message to Earth with a single line attached. "The debt comes due." Admiral Gewin received the same message on her flagship. She had been expecting it. The entire human fleet had been recalled to Earth. And for 2 weeks they had waited in orbit, wondering what would happen next. Now she knew. She called a meeting of her senior officers. Commanders and captains filled the briefing room, their faces serious. They all knew what was coming. "The Villani saved us once," Jiwan said simply. "Now they need us. The Krelvian Dominion is coming to destroy them, and the galaxy has no answer." "We do." Commander Bora looked confused. "Admiral, we have 50 ships. The Krelvians have thousands. How can we possibly help?" Guan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a long time to tell a secret. "We have more than 50 ships," she said. "Much more." She activated a display, and the room fell silent. The screen showed a star map with hundreds of points of light, each one representing a human vessel. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, strike cruisers, dreadnoughts, ships that no one knew existed. Hidden in deep space reserves, maintained in secret for 20 years. "We've been building," Juwan explained. "Since the day the Villani saved us, we've been building. Not because we wanted war, but because we swore we would never be helpless again. We swore that if someone threatened those who showed us kindness, we would have an answer. Today, we honor that oath." General Suho entered the room. He was an old man now, but he stood straight and strong. He had been a young engineer on the Horizon's Promise, one of the people the Villani had saved. For 20 years, he had overseen the secret construction of humanity's true fleet. "We have 2,300 ships ready for deployment," Suho said. "Every one of them equipped with weapon systems based on theories other species abandoned as too dangerous or too expensive. We didn't just build ships. We built a fleet designed to win against superior numbers." The room erupted in whispers. 50 ships to 2,000. The entire defense force had been a decoy, a show for the galaxy, while humanity prepared for the worst in secret. "Why keep this hidden?" someone asked. Minho's voice came through the speakers. He was joining the meeting remotely from the assembly station. "Because the galaxy needed to see us as peaceful. Because if they knew we had this kind of military power, they would have feared us. And fear leads to conflict. We chose to be seen as builders and diplomats, but we never forgot what it felt like to be helpless and dying in the dark." "What are our orders, Admiral?" Commander Bora asked. G1 stood tall. "We deploy the full fleet. We jump to Villani space, and we send a message to the Krelvian Dominion. They can retreat, or they can learn why humans chose peace, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. The officers rose as one, their faces set with determination. They had trained for this moment, prepared for it, but never believed it would come. Now it was here and they were ready. On Earth, the hidden shipyards revealed themselves. Massive doors opened in empty space, held in place by stealth fields that had hidden them for 2 decades. Ships poured out like water from a broken dam, each one bearing the flag of humanity and the names of virtues, honor, justice, mercy, remembrance, debt of gratitude. The largest ship emerged last, a supercarrier that dwarfed everything around it, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand a sun's fury. Admiral Giwan transferred her command to this vessel and stood on its bridge, looking at the crew around her. "We are not doing this for glory," she told them. "We are not doing this for conquest or power. We are doing this because 20 years ago, a kind merchant captain heard a distress call and chose to help strangers. That choice saved 12,000 lives. Today, we repay that debt. Today, the galaxy learns what humans really are." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for Villani space. Behind them, Earth's defensive platforms came online, systems that had been dormant for years, suddenly blazing with power. Humanity was going to war, but they were not leaving their homeworld untaved. In the Galactic Assembly, species watched in stunned silence as the sensors picked up the human fleet. 2,000 ships, where they had thought there were only 50. An entire armada that had been hiding in plain sight. "What are the humans?" Someone whispered. Ambassador Minho heard the question. He thought about his answer carefully before he spoke. "We are a people who remember," he said quietly. "We remember kindness, and we remember debts." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Villani territory, like ghosts materializing from nothing. 2,300 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls dark and angular, their weapons silent but ready. They had traveled for 3 days at speeds that pushed the limits of their engines. And now, they had arrived just hours before the Krelvian vanguard. Admiral Giwan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dead of honor, watching the tactical display. The Villani homeworld appeared as a blue-green sphere on the screen, beautiful and fragile. Around it, civilian ships scattered in panic, trying to evacuate anyone they could. They had thought they would die here. They had accepted it. Then humanity arrived. "Open a channel to the Villani government," Giwan ordered. "All frequencies." High Merchant Hyman appeared on the screen. The old Villani looked exhausted, her pearl-like skin dull with stress. When she saw Giwan's face, her large eyes widened in shock. "You came," Hyman whispered. "I asked only for evacuation ships. I never expected this." "You saved us when we were dying," Giwan replied. "You asked for nothing in return. Today, we answer that debt. No Krelvian ship will touch your world. This is our promise." Tears formed in Hyman's eyes, something rare for her species. "There are so many of them, thousands. You will die trying to save us." Giwan smiled. "We are hard to kill. And we have advantages the Krelvians don't expect. Trust us, High Merchant. We remember what you did for us." The channel closed. Giwan turned to her weapons officer, Commander Dong-Yoon. He was a calm man, methodical and precise. Exactly the kind of person you wanted controlling the most powerful weapons in human space. "Ready all systems," she said. "But hold fire until I give the order. We give them one chance to retreat." "Yes, Admiral." The Krelvian vanguard arrived 30 minutes later. 500 ships, dark and menacing, weapons already charged. They were the advance force, meant to break any orbital defenses before the main fleet arrived. They had done this 100 times before, and they expected this time to be no different. Then they saw the human fleet waiting for them. Warlord Krell received the report in his command ship, still 2 days away from Villani space. His subordinate's voice was confused, uncertain. "My lord, the Villani system is defended. A large fleet is present." Krell frowned. "The Draconary. How many ships?" "Unknown species, my lord." The identification marks are human. Krell laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Humans? The builders and diplomats? How many ships could they possibly have? 50. 100. Over 2,000, my lord? The laughter died. Krell leaned forward in his command throne. Say that again? 2,300 ships. All of them appear to be military-grade warships. They have taken up defensive positions around the Villani homeworld. Krell's mind raced. Intelligence reports said humans had almost no military. They were peaceful, weak, focused on construction and mediation. This made no sense. But 2,000 ships was too many to ignore. Order the Vanguard to engage, he commanded. I want data on these human ships. Find their weaknesses. In Villani space, Admiral Juwan broadcast on all frequencies. Her message was simple and clear, translated into every known language, including Krelvian. This is Admiral Guan of the Human Defense Fleet, commanding the ship Debt of Honor. To all Krelvian forces, you have entered Villani space with hostile intent. The Villani people are under our protection. You have one opportunity to withdraw. Leave now, and no blood will be spilled. Attack, and we will show you why humans chose peace not because we had to, but because we wanted to. The Krelvian commander in charge of the Vanguard was named Throck. He was young for his rank, ambitious and cruel. He heard the human message and sneered. Humans threatening Krelvians. It was like mice threatening tigers. All ships, attack formation, Throck ordered. Target the human vessels. Show them what happens when prey pretends to be a predator. The Krelvian Vanguard charged forward, weapons firing. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the human fleet. It was an impressive display of firepower, enough to crack a planet's crust or vaporize 100 civilian ships. The human fleet didn't move. They held position, their shields absorbing the incoming fire like rocks standing against ocean waves. The Krelvian weapons hit the shields and dispersed, doing no damage at all. Throck stared at his tactical display in confusion. What kind of shields are those? Increase firepower. All batteries, maximum output. The Krelvians fired again, pouring everything they had into the human lines. Still, the shields held. The human ships hadn't even bothered to return fire yet. They just sat there, taking punishment, proving a point. Admiral Guan counted to 60 in her head. She wanted to give the Krelvians time to understand what they were facing, time to realize their weapons were useless, time to feel the first touch of fear. That's enough, she said quietly. Return fire, tactical strikes only. Disable their weapons and engines. I want survivors who can carry a message back to their warlord. The human fleet opened fire, and the Krelvians learned what real military technology looked like. Human weapons didn't just shoot energy beams or missiles. They used principles of physics that other species had deemed too dangerous or too expensive to weaponize. Gravity. Cannons that crushed ship hulls like tin cans. Electromagnetic pulse weapons that fried every system on a ship in seconds. Precision lasers that could target a single rivet on an enemy vessel from 1,000 kilometers away. Kinetic accelerators that fired slugs at near-light speed, turning armor into vapor. The Krelvian Vanguard lasted 7 minutes. It's not 7 hours, not 7 days. 7 minutes. By the end, 400 Krelvian ships were drifting wrecks, their weapons destroyed, their engines offline, their crews alive but helpless. The remaining 100 ships tried to retreat, and the humans let them go. Send a message to those retreating ships, Jiwan ordered. Tell them to inform their warlord that this was our warning. Next time, we won't be so merciful. Commander Dong-Yun looked at the tactical display, his face expressionless. Should we pursue, Admiral? No. We stay here. We defend. That's what we promised. On his command ship, Warlord Krell watched the battle recordings in silence. His generals stood around him equally stunned. They had never seen anything like it. The human ships moved with precision that suggested advanced AI coordination. Their weapons used technology that shouldn't exist. Their tactics were flawless, based on principles of war that the Krelvians thought they had mastered. They destroyed the Vanguard in 7 minutes, one general said, his voice shaking. 500 ships? Gon Krell's pride burned in his chest. He was a warlord, a conqueror. He had never retreated, never backed down. The idea of being defeated by humans, by the species everyone dismissed as weak, was intolerable. "We will attack with the full fleet," he declared. 2,000 ships against their 2,000. We will see if they can maintain that performance when faced with equal numbers. "My lord," another general said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider. If they can do this to the vanguard, what will they do to the main fleet? We are Krelvian," Krell roared. "We do not run from prey. We do not fear builders and diplomats. Order the fleet to attack. We will crush them." The Krelvian main fleet arrived in Villani space 2 days later. It was an impressive sight, a massive armada that had conquered dozens of worlds. They came in battle formation, weapons charged, shields at maximum. They were ready for war. The human fleet had not moved. They still held position around the Villani homeworld, waiting. Admiral Giwan had used the 2 days to rest her crew and prepare for what was coming. She had also sent a message to Earth, requesting additional support just in case. "Here they come," Commander Bora said. 2,100 Krelvian warships. "They've learned from the Vanguard battle. They're spreading out, trying to surround us." Kiwan nodded. "Let them. We're not here to conquer. We're here to defend. And defense is what we're best at." She opened a final channel to the Krelvian fleet. "Warlord Krell, this is your last chance. Turn back.
Oh.
The Villani are under our protection. We don't want to destroy you, but we will if we must." Krell's response was immediate and furious. "You are nothing. You are weak. We will crush you and take the Villani world as tribute. Attack." The Krelvian fleet surged forward. This time, they used better tactics, splitting into multiple groups to attack from different angles. They fired everything they had, thousands of weapons, all discharging at once. The space between the two fleets lit up like a new star being born. The human fleet met them head-on. This time there was no holding back, no mercy, no warnings. Admiral Jiwan had given them a chance to retreat. They had chosen war instead. "All ships," Jiwan said calmly. "Show them what happens when someone threatens our friends." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fleet moved like a single organism, ships supporting each other with perfect coordination. They targeted enemy vessels with surgical precision, destroying weapon systems, crippling engines, eliminating threats one by one. The Krelvians fought bravely, they always did. But bravery meant nothing against technology they couldn't counter, and tactics they couldn't predict. Human ships dodged attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Human weapons penetrated shields that should have been impenetrable. Human strategies exploited weaknesses the Krelvians didn't know they had. Captain Jisoo led a squadron of fighter craft, small ships that moved faster than anything the Krelvians had. They darted between enemy vessels like birds, their weapons taking out critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. Engineer Min Seok, watching from a command ship, monitored the fleet's performance with satisfaction. 20 years of secret development, and everything was working perfectly. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was over. The Krelvian fleet was in ruins. Over 1,500 ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining vessels were retreating in disorder, their formation broken, their morale shattered. Admiral Jawan did not pursue. She had proven her point. The Villani were protected. The debt was being repaid. The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been so crowded. Representatives from every member species filled the chamber, and those who couldn't fit inside watched from screens across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to hear what would happen next. Everyone wanted to understand what humanity had become. The debris of the Krelvian fleet still drifted in space around the Villani homeworld. Warlord Krell had retreated to his borders with what remained. Of his forces, less than 400 ships from his original 2,000. The mighty Krelvian Dominion, which had terrorized the galaxy for months, had been stopped by a species that everyone thought was harmless. Ambassador Minho stood at the human delegation's platform, looking out at the sea of faces and forms. Some species looked grateful. Others looked afraid. Fear and gratitude, he thought, often lived in the same heart. The assembly recognizes the human delegation, the speaker announced. Minho took a breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. What they said now, how they explained their actions, would determine whether they were seen as saviors or as a new threat. High Merchant Hyman stood beside him, invited as an honored guest. She was still recovering from the stress of nearly losing her world, but she had insisted on being here. The old Villani merchant wanted to speak for the humans, to tell the galaxy what she knew about them. Members of the assembly, Minho began, his voice steady. I know you have questions. I know some of you are afraid. You're wondering what humanity really is. You're wondering what we want? So let me answer clearly and honestly. He paused, letting his words settle. 20 years ago, we were a young species, new to space travel, arrogant enough to think we could navigate uncharted territory without consequence. Our colony ship failed in the void, far from help, far from home. 12,000 humans were dying slowly in the dark. We sent a distress signal, not expecting anyone to hear it, not expecting anyone to care about a species they had never met. He gestured to Hyman. The Villani heard us. Captain Hyman, then a merchant captain, diverted her ship to find us. She gave us power cells from her own engines. She shared her food supplies. Her engineers repaired our ship using parts from theirs. She saved us, and when we asked what we owed her, she said we owed nothing. She said helping others was simply what good people did. Minho looked out at the assembly. In that moment, humanity made a choice. We chose to remember. Not just remember the event, but remember what it meant. The Villani showed us that the galaxy could be kind, that strangers could help strangers without expecting payment. Mercy was not weakness. We decided that if we ever had the power to protect such kindness, we would use it. He activated a display showing human shipyards in deep space, massive construction facilities that had been hidden for 2 decades. So we built. While we served the galaxy as engineers and diplomats, while we negotiated treaties and constructed space stations, we also prepared. We built ships in secret, developed weapons, trained crews, not because we wanted war, but because we wanted to be ready if someone threatened those who had shown us mercy. We wanted to ensure we would never be helpless again, and neither would our friends. A murmur ran through the assembly. Some delegates nodded in understanding. Others looked uncomfortable with the deception. You're upset that we hid our true strength, Minho said, acknowledging the discomfort. You feel betrayed. But ask yourselves honestly, if you had known humans possessed a fleet of 2,000 warships, would you have trusted us? Would you have let us build your space stations? Would you have invited us to mediate your disputes? Or would you have seen us as a threat? Silence answered him. The truth was uncomfortable, but undeniable. The galaxy had trusted humans because they seemed weak. If they had known the truth, everything would have been different. We chose to be seen as builders because we wanted to be builders, Minho continued. We chose to be diplomats because we believe in peace. But we kept our strength hidden because we knew the galaxy would fear it. And today, we revealed that strength for one reason only, to protect the Villani people who saved us 20 years ago. He looked at each delegation, making eye contact where species biology allowed. Let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position. We do not want territory. We do not want tribute. We do not want to rule or conquer. What we want is simple. We want a galaxy where kindness is rewarded, where helping strangers is safe, where showing mercy doesn't make you a target. The Krelvians threatened that galaxy. They threatened people who saved us. So we stopped them. A representative from the Korthon species stood, an insectoid being with a buzzing voice. What happens now? Will you humans become the new power in the galaxy? Will you enforce your will on the rest of us? Minho shook his head. No, our fleet will return to its hidden positions. We will continue to serve as we always have, building and mediating, helping where we can. But understand this, we are now known. Any species that threatens those who showed humanity kindness will face our response. Any power that tries to conquer the peaceful, the generous, the merciful, will find humans standing in their way. Another delegate, a reptilian Draknari warrior, stood up, You say you defend the kind and peaceful. But what if one of your protected species does something wrong? What if they attack another? Will you defend them then? Good question, Minho replied. The answer is no. We defend kindness, not blind loyalty. If the Villani suddenly decided to become conquerors, we would oppose them just as we oppose the Krelvians. Our oath is to protect those who choose mercy and peace, not to support our friends regardless of their actions. High Merchant Hyman stepped forward then, her elderly form moving slowly but with dignity. The assembly fell silent, respecting her age and her recent ordeal. I would like to speak, she said, her translated voice soft but clear. I want to tell you about humans, because I know them better than most. She looked at Minho with affection. 20 years ago, I saved them because it was the right thing to do. I expected nothing in return. But humans, I learned, do not forget debts. They gave me a compass from their world, and their captain told me they would remember. I thought it was just words that kind people say when they are grateful. But humans meant it literally. They remembered. For 20 years, they remembered. They built a fleet in secret, not for conquest, but so they could protect me if I ever needed protection. She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Do you understand what that means? For 20 years, humans worked and built and prepared, all for a debt they felt they owed to strangers who helped them once. That is what humans are. They are people who remember kindness and repay it 1,000-fold. Tears glistened in her large eyes. My people were dying. We had accepted our fate. Then humanity arrived with 2,000 ships and fought a battle to save us. Not for territory, not for resources, just because we once gave them food and spare parts when they were lost in the dark. If you want to know whether to fear humans, ask yourselves this: have you been kind to them? If yes, then you have nothing to fear. If no, then perhaps you should reconsider your relationship with them. She sat down, exhausted but satisfied. Minho touched her shoulder gently, a gesture of respect and gratitude. The Draknari delegate stood again. The Draknari people respect strength and honor. Humans have shown both. We would be honored to stand alongside you in future conflicts. Other delegates began to speak, some offering friendship, others asking for clarification on human intentions. The mood in the assembly had shifted. Fear remained, yes, but it was mixed with respect, and in many cases, relief. The Krelvians had been stopped. The peaceful species of the galaxy could breathe easier. But Minho noticed that not everyone was happy. Some of the more aggressive species, those who had benefited from the previous order where strength meant conquest, looked troubled. They understood that the galaxy had changed. A new factor had entered the equation, one that would complicate their plans. On the Villani homeworld, Admiral Juwan walked through the Museum of Friendship. It had been opened to the public again after the battle. Villani citizens came in crowds to see the compass that had started everything. They wanted to touch it, to see this small object that had meant so much. Guan stood before the display case, looking at the brass compass with its green patina. The engraving was still clear. We remember. A young Villani child approached her shyly. Are you the admiral who saved us? The child asked. Jiwan knelt down to the child's level. I helped save you, yes? But many people worked together to protect your world. Why did you do it? The child asked. My teacher says you came from very far away. Why would you risk your lives for us? Jawan smiled and pointed at the compass. Because your people were kind to mine when we needed help. And humans never forget kindness. Never? The child asked, eyes wide. Never, Juwan confirmed. We remember every act of mercy, every gesture of friendship, every moment when someone chose to help instead of ignore. And we repay those debts. Always. The child thought about this seriously. So if I'm kind to people, they'll remember. Some will, Guan said. Not everyone is like humans, but enough species value kindness that it's always worth being good to others. You never know when that kindness will come back to you. The child nodded and ran off to tell friends about the conversation. Jiwan stood up, watching the young Villani play. They would grow up in a galaxy that was a little bit safer, a little bit kinder, because humanity had chosen to honor an old debt back on Earth. The hidden shipyards were already building again. Not more warships, but hospital ships, construction vessels, and exploration craft. Humanity was returning to its role as builders and healers, but everyone knew now that if needed, if someone threatened those humans protected, the fleet would emerge again. In the weeks that followed, something interesting happened throughout the galaxy. Species that had once shown kindness to humans suddenly found themselves under humanity's protective watch. A merchant race that had given humans favorable trade terms discovered human patrol ships in their territory, guarding against pirates. A scientific species that had shared research with humans found their colonies defended by human vessels. Word spread quickly. Being kind to humans was the best protection in the galaxy. Being cruel to those humans cared about was the most dangerous mistake anyone could make. The Krelvian Dominion pulled back to its borders and stayed there. Warlord Krell, humiliated by his defeat, never spoke of humans again. But he remembered them. Everyone did. Ambassador Minho sat in his quarters one evening. Looking at a message from Captain Deho, the old captain, now retired, had watched the battle recordings with tears of pride. "We kept our promise," he had written. "We remembered. We repaid the debt. I can die happy now, knowing humans are who I always hoped we would be." Minho wrote back, "The debt is repaid, but the friendship continues. That's the real gift the Volani gave us. They showed us what kind of galaxy we wanted to build." On a space station, far from Earth, a young human engineer was helping repair a damaged alien ship. The alien captain, from a species humans had never met before, asked why humans were so helpful. The engineer smiled and told the story of the Horizon's Promise and the Volani merchant who saved them. She explained how that one act of kindness had shaped humanity's entire approach to the galaxy. "So you help others because someone helped you once?" the alien captain asked. "We help others because that's who we want to be," the engineer replied. "The Volani showed us it was possible, and we show others the same thing. Maybe someday, someone will help you when you need it most. And maybe you'll remember and help someone else. That's how we build a better galaxy, one act of kindness at a time." The alien captain thought about this and nodded slowly. It was a simple philosophy but powerful, and it was spreading. In the Museum of Friendship on the Volani homeworld, they added a new exhibit next to the compass. It was a piece of hull plating from the human ship Debt of Honor, scarred by Krelvian weapons but unbroken. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Given to the Volani people by Admiral Guan of humanity. She saved millions of our lives because we once saved thousands of theirs. This is what it means to be human, to remember kindness and repay it 1,000-fold." May we all learn from their example. Across the galaxy, slowly but surely, other species did learn. They learned that kindness was not weakness. They learned that mercy was strength. They learned that helping strangers could change the course of history. They learned why humans should not be feared. Not because humans were weak, but because they were loyal beyond measure, grateful beyond reason, and capable of building a galaxy where being good to others was the smartest strategy of all. 20 years after a simple act of mercy in the darkness of space, the galaxy was becoming a kinder place. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. And humanity stood watch, quiet and patient, ready to defend that kindness whenever it was threatened, because humans remembered. They always would.